to whatever we put inside of it. And in this case, we want the container inside of the navbar so that it's not constricting the actual navbar itself, but it is restricting the content inside of it. Okay, so div class container, we have our header, we have the stuff on the left, and we have some content on the right, as you can see here. Now let's step it up a little bit and go and take this basic navbar or the default navbar that they have in the docs. And let's copy this entire thing. And I'll just put it right below our navbar. Make some space. I'll add a comment in to make it clear. Default navbar. And let's take a look at it. Refresh. So it's this navbar here. And there's a few things I want to highlight. One is that we have drop-down menus, but they don't actually work. And also, as we resize the window, we get the hamburger menu here. Those links go away, the form goes away. And to reveal them, we need to click here, but that doesn't work either. So let's begin by getting it to work, and then we'll talk about all these different pieces and what they do. To make it work, we need to go and include the Bootstrap JavaScript file. So if we go back to the Bootstrap docs, we click on download, there's also a JavaScript file that we need, which is right here. I'll use the CDN version, but it also comes inside the folder that you download. It's just called bootstrap.js, or the minified version, bootstrap.min.js. And let's add that, and we'll do it down at the bottom of our body and save. And I know we haven't talked about JavaScript. You don't know what a script is and what source here does. It doesn't matter. We're just going to plug it into Bootstrap. And now I'll refresh, and we still have one small problem, which I'll show you here. It tells us that Bootstrap's JavaScript requires jQuery. Don't worry about what this is and how I got to this message, but I just wanted to show it to you so that you see the actual message we get. We need to require jQuery, which we also haven't talked about, but it's easy enough to go and get. We don't have to write any JavaScript. We don't have to know any JavaScript. We just have to include it. So all we need to do is search for jQuery CDN, which is on code.jquery.com. And down here, we need to select the most recent version and copy this URL. This is the jQuery file. And then we'll go back. And down here, we're going to add another one of these script tags, basically copying this exact code. In fact, I'll do that to make it easier. Just duplicate that exact line and change this URL to be the jQuery URL. If all else fails, you can just type this out. It's not that bad of a URL. But I got this by searching for jQuery CDN, and we'll save. And this does need to come before Bootstrap's JavaScript file because it relies on jQuery. So one more time, don't worry too much about what it is, how it works, what jQuery is. That's all coming up a few units from now. But to get the most out of Bootstrap, and in particular the navbars and the drop-down menus, we just need to have these two lines anytime we're using it. So we'll go back now and refresh. First of all, our drop-down menus now work. As you can see, we now have drop-down menus. We're not going to talk about that in this video, but as I resize and I get that hamburger, the hamburger now works. When I click on it, it toggles that hidden material. So the way that it works, right here, there's this little breakpoint right here where all of this content hides. And all that we see is the header and that button. And then when we click on the button, all that previously hidden content reappears. Let's get that to work now for us, but we're going to do a much less complicated version where we just want to hide these 4 links so that when we resize, these 4 links are hidden. And then when we click, they'll be displayed. To do that, we're going to start by taking a look at how it's accomplished in this default version, this giant monster of a navbar. And I'll just point out the important line right here. Div class collapse navbar collapse. Whatever we put inside of this div will be collapsed when we hit mobile size. So it won't make the button for us. It won't do the toggling and the reappearing and hiding, but it will hide whatever content we put inside of it when we hit that tablet and mobile size. So I'm going to copy this, and we just need to wrap it around the content we want to hide. And we want to hide this here, these 2 ULs. So the 4 links we want to hide when we hit that smaller screen size. So we'll add in the closing div tag and save. And there is a line here, and this is important, and I'll get to it in just a moment. It won't impact us just yet. But if we refresh, you'll see now when I resize, there's a point right here where all that content inside of the collapse div goes away. Now it doesn't reappear. We don't get this hamburger. We don't get a click on anything, but it has collapsed. It's gone away. And that's because we added in this line here, div class collapse navbar collapse. The next thing we need to do is add in the hamburger. And it is quite a bit of code, unfortunately. It's still much better than if we had to do it ourselves. But the hamburger is actually all of this right here. So I'm going to copy that and paste it on up inside of the navbar header before our coffee anchor tag. And we'll save. And I'll come back to what it does. Let's just refresh. And now if I resize, I get the hamburger. There we go. Now let me explain a little bit about how it works. So there's a button, and then inside that button there's 3 spans, and each one is responsible for making one of these bars. So it's not an image that we're seeing here, it's actually HTML that's making this. Little spans that are being styled into those narrow bars to make that hamburger. And then as far as the showing and hiding of the content when we click on it, what's really important is that we have this data target attribute. And whatever this is set to, in our case, BS example navbar collapse 1, bootstrap example navbar collapse 1, let's just change it to BS nav demo, just like that. Then we need to change the ID of the content that we want to actually collapse, that we want to show and hide. So we'll change it to match BS nav demo. Notice one important difference. We're not adding in the octothorpe. So it's just like CSS. When we select something with CSS, we need to use that octothorpe to target an ID. So we leave the ID as just the text, the name BS nav demo. Here we add that octothorpe in. So we'll save, refresh. Now if I resize, we get the hamburger, and I click on it, and it works to toggle that showing and hiding. Great. The last thing that I'll show to you is that if we move something outside of this collapse, so let's take these links here, the account or the about and contact, and we just move those right here outside of the collapse div, and I refresh, you can see that they don't actually collapse, they stay there. And then I click on that, and the other 2 that are inside of the collapse are toggled. Now I'm not saying this looks good, but it does illustrate the importance of that collapse div. So whatever we put inside of collapse, whatever we have, in our case, 4 different links, 2 that are on the right, 2 that are on the left, they all will collapse whenever we hit that smaller mobile size. And then to make them show again, we click on this button here, and that button has a data target attribute, and whatever ID this corresponds to will be hidden and shown when we click on that. And that happens to be this ID here. Okay, so kind of a marathon, a lot of stuff that goes into making a Bootstrap navbar. But again, the way we got there was just by straight up copying this into our file and dissecting pieces of it. And that's how I make a navbar pretty much every time. We just take that example code and figure out what pieces we need and go from there.